Hello and welcome to this CodeRage Mobile session on building and submitting your app to the Apple App Store. My name is Ohlsson and let's get started. So let's start out with submitting a new application. We're going to use my MathViz application and submit it as a new application to the App Store. So let's start from scratch here. We have to log into iTunes Connect. We click on Manage Your Apps, and we go ahead and say Add New App. We want to add an iOS app. We're going to call it MathViz Delete Me 2. Let's see, unique ID for your app. Can be something like that. Bundle ID, we're going to select Xcode wildcard app ID. The suffix is going to be something like this. Typically, it's a reverse DNS notation that's recommended, and I'm putting in com.andersohlsson.mathviz, and then since my shipping version has 01, I'm just adding another piece to it because we're going to delete this after we're done here. We're just doing this as a test. Availability date could be immediately. Pricing tier, let's go with free. Discount, sure, even on free you can do discounts. Just kidding. Hit continue. Gonna give it a version number. Can be 1.0. Copyright can be that. Primary category, let's go with utilities. Secondary category is not necessary. Now we have to rate our application on various different things. So we don't have any cartoon or fantasy violence. We don't have any realistic violence. We don't have any nudity. We don't have any profanity. No drug references. No suggestive themes. No gambling. No horror themes. No violence, and still no nudity. Okay. MathViz is a cool little app to visualize mathematical functions in 3D. We can say math graph. Yeah, there we go. FireMonkey math graph. That'll work. Support URL is required. Blogs.embarcadero.com/AO is good. Contact information, Anders Ohlsson. Perfect. Review notes are optional. Demo account is optional. If we had a kind of a banking app or something that you need to log into, then you have to submit demo account information so that they can actually test against something. EULA, I can specify a specific EULA. Not going to do that. I do have to upload a whole bunch of different icons here though. So a large app icon, let's see what it's supposed to be. Okay, it's supposed to be 1024 by 1024. All right, let's see if we have a file matching that. 1024.png. Okay, let's go ahead and open. It's going to upload and show us inline. Okay, looks like MathViz, great. 3.5-inch Retina display screenshot. This is a iPod or iPhone 4 type resolution. Did I put that in here? Yeah, iPhone 4. Okay. I call these screenshots, by the way, in the simulator. 4-inch Retina. That's the iPhone 5. And it actually double checks if these criteria don't match. If this is a different resolution that I'm uploading here, it will actually complain and say you can't do this. So you have to upload the correct artwork. It does checks on sizes. iPad screenshot was iPad. Upload that as well. Okay, looking good. Routing app coverage file is optional. Oh, it's for geographic regions supported by your app. Interesting. I've never seen that before. Cool. Okay, save. All right, so we've done the first steps now. We've actually set up the SKU, the bundle ID, the Apple ID. It gets generated for us. It's an iOS app, of course. It's English by default. If we wanted to set up in-app purchases, we'd do that here. Game Center, setting up iAd network. If we want to enable ads in our application, we can enable that here. Newsstand, of course, we can do that. We can delete the app as well. Okay, so now it says prepare for upload. Is the status here. All right, let's go look at the details. And here is the magic button, ready to upload binary. We can take a last minute check here and see, okay, it looks good. We got good screenshots. All right, so ready to upload binary. Let's click on that. I didn't add any cryptography in my app. I'm now ready to upload my binary using Application Loader. Okay, latest version of Application Loader is available here. Oh, I'm not going to download it. I already have it, but it's downloadable from inside of iTunes Connect here. We hit continue. Now it says waiting for upload, so it's waiting for us to actually upload the application. All right. So we've done all the setup to create the application record in iTunes Connect. So let's go back. Let's go to the IDE and see what we're actually doing here. So we have MathViz, a very simple version of it. We can go ahead and run it on my iPad and see what it does. Here's my iPad. Go back to landscape here, so I can click on the first button and it shows me a nice 3D graph of a mathematical function. I have a couple other buttons, so it does a few things. It's not a, in this case I don't have any rotational stuff or anything in here, but it will serve as an example to submit to the App Store. We're going to delete it immediately, of course, because this is not ready by any means. So what we need to do here now is we need to go to the App Store deployment, as opposed to debug, which is debugging on your local device. For App Store, we need to go and look at the options that we have, specifically a couple different nodes. Application here, for instance. Here is where we specify all the application icons for non-retina and retina application icons, non-retina launch image, retina launch image, for iPhone 4 type screen, for iPhone 5 type screen, and we have the spotlight search icons as well. iPad has a little bit more, non-retina and retina icons, launch image for portrait, for landscape, and various sizes. For retina and non-retina, spotlight, setting icon, and such. We also have orientation. By default, we support all 4 orientations. You can specify custom orientation and maybe just support landscape with the home button on the right or with the home button on the left. Typically, we do all of them. Version info. This is the tab that will have the version number. I said version 1.0, so in iTunes Connect, so that's what I'm going to have here. Bundle identifier needs to match what we put in iTunes Connect. So this is going to be under Ohlsson dot mathviz.01.02. If it doesn't match, we will get errors when we submit the application. Provisioning, we need to go to the build type, AppStore, distribution certificate, and this is a segue to go over to the Mac and look at my keychain and see what's in my keychain. There's my keychain. So here's my iPhone developer certificate. Here's my distribution certificate. This is what I need. So iPhone distribution. This is a partial string match, by the way, so I don't have to put in : Anders Ohlsson. If you have multiples, then you may need to specify the full thing. Mobile provisioning profile. I have a copy for simplicity of my provisioning profile. It's on my desktop, embedded.mobile provisioning. Mobile provision. So it is relative to my Mac now, my Mac user. So it's in my home directory, desktop / embedded dot mobile provision. Okay. If I put that correctly here, I can now hit the load ID button, and it should get the developer ID automatically. And it did. It worked. Okay, so I pulled that out of there. Good. So I hit OK now. And now I can go ahead and build it. So it's going to compile link, code sign with my proper. Oh, I get an error because I was trying to run it. I can't run an actual IAP file, which is what gets generated here for the App Store. And in order to run something from the App Store, you actually have to download it from the App Store. Okay, so now what we can do now, or what we should do now, is go to Application Loader. Application Loader is an application that runs on your Mac that allows you to put stuff into the two app stores, the iOS App Store or the Mac OS X App Store. Ooh. Oh, I changed my password. How can I do that then? Okay, here we go. All right. Good deal. We're good to go. All right. MathViz delete me too 1.0 iOS app. Yes, sounds good. That looks like the screenshot that I put up there. We can verify some information. Okay, cool. Looking good. We're going to pick the app. This is going to be in your Scratch directory. So when you run PA server, typically under your user, you have a rad PA server directory. Under there, there's a Scratch directory. Under there is the name of your profile. In my case, it's EBT Anders device. I have my analog clock here. That's the analog clock app that's already in the App Store. MathViz IPA is what I had. Okay, so I built that at 9:45 and it's 9:47, so that sounds good. That's the latest one. We hit open, and now comes the interesting part. Did we miss anything? Did we have any mismatches in bundle identifier or anything else, version number, stuff like that? It's going to catch all that here. It's going to catch non-public API usage if we're doing that. It's going to authenticate with the iTunes Store, verify the assets, uploading my package to the iTunes Store, and it's going to say you have uploaded. Okay, good. You've successfully added your application to the App Store. Excellent. Hit done. And we can go back to the web page that I had, which is iTunes Connect. We go ahead and reload. And now it says upload received. So now it's doing some server-side checks. It's going to make sure that everything is kosher. Sometimes you have an older version of application loader that you have on your machine, and it doesn't do all the necessary checks on the client side, so all those checks are double checked on the server side before your application actually gets in front of the reviewers, the review team. So when you are done, when the server-side checks are done, you get an email, which I just did, that says that it's now waiting for review. So it didn't find any issues with this app at this point. So now it's all up to the review team for the human review to review it on real devices and check that you're not doing anything that you shouldn't be doing, etc. In your app, that it looks good and follows guidelines and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and actually, since we actually don't want this in there, we are going to reject it ourselves. And this, you can do this if you find a bug or whatever and you want to re-upload it again. You can go in and developer reject, and you'll get an email for a confirmation, and it says developer rejected as the status. And then you can go ahead and hit the ready to upload binary when you have a new binary to upload, and then start over, essentially. The final thing that we're going to do here actually with this application is we're going to delete it because it was just a test thing. So there we go. So let's go back to the slides here. So that was a very quick example of how to submit a brand new application to the App Store. So let's go ahead now and take a look at how do we update an existing app. It's pretty similar, actually. So MathViz 1.1 is already in the App Store, and we're going to make an update and then submit it the same way we did the new application. So here we go into MathViz, and we see that I've already added a new version. Adding a new version is simply you have to agree that you didn't put any encryption into the application, or if you did, you have to specify it and then drill into details about what kind of encryption you put in and how do you use it, etc. You also have to tell Apple whether or not you updated the app because of a legal issue. And typically it's a no. Sometimes it might be a yes, and then you probably have to go into details as well. I've never tried that actual thing. If you wanted to add in-app purchasing or set up the iAd network, you can do that now for the new version that you're going to have here. You see I've already played around with this earlier, so we can view details. It was developer rejected. Here's the original description and all the screenshots. We got the 3.5-inch screenshot, the 4-inch screenshot, the iPad screenshots, etc. We can go ahead and say, okay, I'm ready to upload the binary now. So here, I didn't add any encryption features, and I didn't update it because of a legal issue. If I say yes, probably get details. Yeah, here we go. So for legal issues, you can actually make sure that stuff gets taken out of the App Store, apparently. Cool. So we hit no, and we say okay. Let's go ahead and say I will release MathViz 1.2 after it's been approved, or you can release it immediately when review has finished and succeeded. So we go ahead and here we are at waiting for upload again. Okay, so let's go back to our application. Let's not make any changes in here. We're going to see what kind of errors we get now. We know that the version number is going to collide, but let's see what happens here. It's interesting to see these errors. So MathViz 1.2, that's our update. We're going to go ahead and submit it. Okay, looking good here. We choose the application. MathViz IPA, okay. I built that still at 945. That's 953. Go ahead and open it. And we'll go ahead and send it. And now we should see a bunch of errors. Okay, bundle identifier is incorrect. It differs from what we have. Okay, so let's see. I need to change it to 01 instead of 0102. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Can simply go in here to project options and version info, and it needs to be that. Okay. We're still going to have the versioning problem, so I just want to show you that as well. We're going to ignore the deployment error that happens here. It's actually trying to put it on my iPad. So now we have a new file over here. We're going to go ahead and send it again. Oh, now it says, okay, the bundle is invalid. The key value for CF bundle version 1.00 in the EFP list must contain a higher version than the previous version, which is 1.1. Okay, and same thing for the CF bundle short version string. We actually generate this for you based on the other one. So we need to go and change the version number. Version number, if you recall, was 1.2. Okay, let's go ahead and redeploy it. See what happens. We're going to get the same deployment error because you can't install an IAP file or an IPA file on your device unless you go through the App Store. So let's go back here and submit the app and see if it succeeds this time. Okay, it looks like it. We're going to analyze the API usage. Waiting for a response. Okay, that's analyzed. Authenticating. Verifying some assets. Testing. And finally uploading. Finalizing delivery. Hit next. Okay, you're good to go. Let's go back to iTunes Connect. We go ahead and hit refresh. Now it says upload received. And we wait for a little bit. It was pretty fast the last time. So, like I said, they do the server-side checks just in case you have I used an older version of application loader and didn't do all the checks on the client side. So, and of course they do other automated checks on their side as well, the server side. So we're waiting for a magic email that says that status is waiting for review. And whenever that comes in, we can refresh. Okay, and I got my email. And now it says waiting for a review. So now, of course, it's up to the human review team again to review my application. Since I don't want actually this thing to be updated, I'm going to go ahead and reject the binary myself. Status goes back to developer rejected. And whenever I'm actually ready to submit a real update, I can go and hit the ready to upload button again. So let's close with a few different things that on the main page of iTunes Connect, when you log in, they have recently introduced app transfer, so you can transfer an application from one developer account to another developer account in the case of an acquisition or something like that. You can, they've also introduced iAd Workbench, so you can set up your own ad campaigns and submit them through iAd for displaying in other people's applications, making advertisements for your application, for your app. You can see your sales and trends. You can enter all your contracts, tax and banking information for payments to you, for tax purposes. Contracts, of course, is for country by country or worldwide, for iOS, for macOS 10 applications, for free applications, and that kind of stuff. You can get payments and financial reports. You can manage your users, whether it's test accounts for in-app purchasing or iTunes Connect users that you want to have access. You manage your apps, which is where we were earlier, to add, view, and manage your AppStore apps. Like I said, the iAd Workbench is right here. And then you can get to developer forums and, of course, contact Apple as well. Oh, one thing that I forgot to mention, if your app doesn't pass review, you actually will find an error when you're going to manage your apps. In the email, it will tell you to go into the Resolution Center. And the Resolution Center will have the reason for your rejection. And they will give you typically the bullet in the review guidelines, the paragraph that your application is not passing, and they'll give you some tips and hints. For instance, I had an in-app purchasing version of my app that didn't implement restore for previous purchases. So since you have to actually support restoring previous purchases when it comes to non-consumable products, for instance, a pro level that somebody has bought, it has to be supported on all that user's devices. If they delete the application and install it later, they have to be able to restore it. So you have to have a restore button that provides that functionality for you. Okay, so let's go back to the slides here. And so what we've done, we've submitted a new application. We submitted an update to an application. And that concludes this presentation. So thank you very much for watching this presentation, whether it's live or after the fact. Feel free to check out my blog at blogs.embarcadero.com/AO. And now we'll go into Q&A.
Davis asked, in the process of submitting to the App Store, have you ever talked to a live person, or has it all been handled electronically? Now, Andrew's done both for different apps. A lot of in the case of his analog clock and the MathViz, it was just all handled through the steps that he showed you electronically. There was an app that we were trying to get submitted that Andrew's built, and it was called MyEDN. And the idea was it was going to be an iOS app that allowed you to look at your EDN status, update your, your demographic information, your email address, whatever it might be. One of the parts of the app on a separate tab was going to show you all your registered products, the keys for them. That way, and that's, if you go into member services and you go to EDN and you go into your profile, there's all the settings on the first page, which is, your address, your email address. Do you want email? Do you want news? All those flags. Don't contact me, whatever it might be. And then there's another tab to show all the registered products. I'm always forgetting my keys when I reinstall, but I've got them all in they're all connected to your EDN account. So he had another tab where he would show either by filtered, like all your Delphi keys or product keys or all your Red Studio keys or all your keys. Apple kept rejecting his app because they thought that meant that that app, MyEDN, was allowing you to purchase software. And they said, well, you can't build an app that purchases software. You got to build an app that is in the App Store, and you purchase in the App Store, and Apple gets its piece. And so Anders ultimately, after trying to keep submitting it and explain, he contacted a person who rejected it. And they actually said, hey, give us a call. We don't understand what you're trying to do after electronic interchanges. and he actually talked to a human being and tried to explain this was just displaying information that was in your EDN account and not any kind of purchasing. It was stuff you had purchased through a normal world. So that was a case where you actually had to call and talk to a human being to try to explain. We never got past all that. They still thought this was some kind of purchasing application. But of course, you know, you can purchase stuff through Amazon, and there you are purchasing products that get shipped to you. But Apple somehow thought this was, the reviewer thought this was purchasing software that was going to be in the app called My EDN. But maybe Anders will try again someday. There was a question about, can the submission steps be automated or scripted? And Bruce, I saw some people trying to create script files and PHP apps to sort of trick all the browser steps, the manual steps, to think there was a human. I think they may have given up. I don't know of any automated way that Apple allows you to do it. You basically follow the step that Anders has done. If anybody else knows of some automated system, then let us know. Oh, Ian mentioned that it seemed like setting all the splash images and the icons and the screen samples and all the other Apple required stuff took longer than writing and testing the apps in the first place. Well, it depends on how complex your app is, I guess. But it is kind of funny. There's a lot you have to put in to get your app into either the Macintosh store or the iOS App Store. Frank asked how to select a target device, and Anders showed that if you go into the project options application, there's the key value pairs where you can set the UI device family that your app is going to run, and that gets generated and passed along, and you can choose either iPhone and iPad, iPhone only, or iPad only. And that way, when you are in the iTunes store, just as a user, and you say, show me all the iPad apps or show me the iPad and iPhone apps, it's driven off of that key value pair as part of project options. What versions, Kenneth is asking, what versions of your iPhone does your app have to be able to run on? How do you tell the App Store what versions you support? So we support building apps for iOS 5.1, 6.0, 6.1 currently. Those are the iOS versions. Then the apps run on whatever target devices are supported by those SDKs. So, for example, I run, well, until I got upgraded to 4S, I was running Delphi iOS apps using iOS 6.1.2, I think, on my iPhone 3GS. I'm told that Apple announced at WWDC last week that iOS 7 is going to only run on, 4S and above, I think. Somebody else can chime in if they want. But whatever device runs the operating system that your application is built for, the SDK that you specify when you do the build, and you saw that in JT and all the other demos, when you do the SDK manager, you point, and Olaf is saying maybe it's iPhone 4 and up for iOS 7. So we'll see once iOS 7 finally is released. But whatever SDK you build your app with, and you choose that SDK via the SDK manager, then if the device is supported for that SDK version, then it'll work. Things like ShareSheet, I think Serena mentioned that. The ShareSheet API came in iOS 6.0 and later. So if you're using ShareSheet capability in your app, then you're building, the only way to build that would be with SDK 6.0, 6.1. Who reviews your app? It's someone at Apple. There's a whole team of people reviewing apps. As Anders showed, there's some checks that happen automatically, but then when it moves from the submission and those checks are run, then it says waiting for review, and that waiting for review is a human being at Apple somewhere that reviews your app. So beware what your app does. If your app requires some server-side functionality, make sure that that server is running. if it's talking to an Amazon instance. I know some apps like Foursquare and some of the other systems, Word with Friends, I think they run their server-side things on Amazon instances. Well, if that Amazon instance is down when Apple decides to test your submitted application, they will reject it by saying the app failed because it couldn't connect to a server-side service, whatever it might be. Okay, then Frank, there was a couple things. Frank, you have two devices connected to the Mac. I've done that. I've connected my iPhone and my iPad, and you can only choose one device at a time, is the way I understand it, to target at a specific time with the Xcode interface and the PA server. If you can't have a 10-port USB hub and have them all connected and deployed all of them, there's only one active device at a time, as far as I know. GLS, is there any way to test the IApp file before uploading it to the App Store? Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there's all the testing you do with ad hoc, with debug versions, all the testing that you do. But as far as, I don't know of any Apple system other than the human final review that looks at user guidelines and so on. I know Microsoft has a tool that will test an app for certain things that you want to submit to their store, but I don't know of any, other than the testing everybody normally does, I don't know of any way to probe an app to see what it might do dynamically at runtime to render controls correctly or incorrectly. So I don't know anything like that. Is there any way to check for disallowed APIs without loading the app in the App Store? Well, I don't know what you mean by a disallowed API. If there's old APIs, I know there's been times, and Olaf and others may chime in, there have been cases where Apple has come out with new SDKs and has said that while existing apps in the store can still stay there, but that they wouldn't accept any updates for older SDKs when they identify that a certain SDK is no longer supported. And they sort of force everybody to resubmit updated apps with a specific SDK or later. So that's the only case where I'd know that something like a disallowed API. There's some things that are deprecated and so on, and there's other apps, APIs you can't use based on changes. For example, we had the discussion earlier about the device ID versus the vendor ID, for example. And again, it's someone at Apple reviews it. Can you go to the App Store using only Mac and Cloud? You can still build in the IDE an App Store app, because in Mac and Cloud you would have the Xcode and the command line tools and the libraries and header files and the SDKs. So you have all of that. The building of the app happens as part of the IDE process. And then once that's done, as Anders showed you, he was sort of hitting run, but really not really. He had set store as the target, and the app file was created on his Windows machine. And then he went through his browser. He was using Firefox to go through all the different steps, the application loader, the iTunes Connect, and all of that. So having Mac and Cloud to help you build your application, whether you build and run it on the simulator or you build it for the App Store, but you don't have a device to test it, then you can always hope. It's always better to test on the device before you submit to the App Store. But if you think you've done everything perfect, Danny, only thing that'll happen is you might get rejected for some reason, because it might have worked in the simulator but not on the device for some reason. Let's see, perhaps a dumb question. Is there any kind of resource for generating all the icons images you need from single master hybrids resource? Again, in project options application is where you specify the icons, the spotlight icons for both iPhone, iPad, if that's what your application device family is supporting. We also will generate a lot of those for you, but there's things like a screenshot, a screen example, and you saw Anders, he took a screen grab of his Math Viz because you need to give the iTunes Store a sample visualization of your application when it's running in several resolutions. So I don't know of any resource that knows how to automatically launch your application, automatically use Grab or some other screen grabbing tool to get the real running application. I think Anders one time just had MathViz running on Windows, so all he did was run it on Windows, use the snip tool that comes with Windows at different resolutions, and he used those bitmaps to submit to iTunes Connect as the screen images. So anyway, and David and Olaf were saying, and also, iOS, it's iPhone 4 and above is what currently Apple has announced. Can prototype apps be installed directly to your local device using USB build? Yes, the answer is that. We've been showing that all the time. Do a debug build and hit run or deploy from the project deployment menu item, and you can send it right through USB to the connected device. Olaf is mentioning there are people that re-sign the IPA file for ad hoc deploy. Okay. That's a messy process, though, he adds. Yeah, well, place on the internet where you can find the signature for things you may not use, such as... So, Ernest, I think you're asking, will you always see that error? Because Anders was hitting run. I think what he was doing was hitting run instead of build or deploy, build a deployment build, because it was just faster to hit the run arrow in the ID rather than going project, deployment, bringing up the deployment window, and there's a green arrow there to do a deploy, build, deploy. So I think that was just his faster way in the ID to hit run and ignore the error and have the IPA file get created once he had set the AppStore target underneath the iOS target project. Okay, Olaf is mentioning once you put that into your app, Apple may reject if they find you're using static analyzers. Yeah, I mean, they have all sorts of reasons to reject apps, and I know there's been stories over time where there wasn't a clear list of all the rejection types and reasons for the rejections. You can always send an email to ask for more information if they'll give it to you. And in the early days, there was sometimes no rhyme or reason why one app was accepted, another one wasn't. It could have been based on the human that reviewed it and their level of review understanding. Thomas says, if we create an app with IB2Go and encryption, we'll have to answer the encryption questions differently. It's very likely that depending on the encryption you're using, and part of that has to do with the fact that the iTunes or the iOS App Store, the Apple Mac Store as well, you can be anywhere in the world downloading apps, purchasing apps, and so on. And if there's any export restrictions because of things like really high level encryption, then that's where Anders said you got to really explain. If you say yes, your app has some encryption technology in it, you're going to have to explain, is it, low grade, is it 128-bit or higher AES? Some of that is under export control. So you just have to explain to Apple what you're using there. Let's see, you can take a snapshot in the Xcode organizer. Absolutely, you can do that as well. There's many ways to get a snapshot of the screen of the app and so on. There's all sorts of ways to do it. And there's different resolutions that are required, and all of that you'll see when you go through the submission process. Victor, if you deploy to the device, it can be run after disconnecting from the Mac. Then it's installed on your iOS device through the USB cable, so you can use it as long as you want. So the IPA file is actually still on Windows. It's in a subdirectory. You'll see in your project folder, you'll see the different target platforms, whether it's iOS or Mac or OS X or Win32, Win64. You'll see an iOS, and underneath that, you'll see whether it's a store app or a debug app and so on. You'll see those folders underneath. So just try it. Build a iOS app in exe4 and go and look at the subdirectories that are generated for debug build, release builds, store builds, and so on. And I think you saw in the video in Andrew's presentation, he was using Firefox on Windows to call iTunes Connect, and he was navigating and doing his upload to get his file. So, and Bruce is asking, are there export restrictions on Airbase that includes encryption? There may be. The default encryptions that come for things like DataSnap are not export restricted, or the weak encryption is not restricted, but there is a purchasable version of strong encryption from Interbase where you're going to have to agree to export restrictions to be able to get those keys. It just depends on what encryption you purchase. So it depends on the encryption you purchase. There's strong and weak encryption for Interbase to go and Interbase server. IB Lite does not support encryption, so no worries if you're deploying an application with IB Lite. Do I know, Olaf saying, do I know if anybody tried to submit a Delphi iOS app that uses Indie SSL stuff? Does Apple know about it yet? I don't know if anybody submitted one. People have been playing with using the Indie components and a static SSL library. I don't know if anybody's tried to submit one. Sounds like a good thing for someone to try, and tell them that you're doing link level encryption or security.